Hello friends, I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope you have electricity and you're safe and everything is warm. It is Friday. We made it to the end of the week. So here we are, and I want to do another recap because I enjoyed doing it last week, and I realized that not everybody goes and reads other people's comments and my responses. And I try to respond to nearly everybody. Sometimes somebody just drops like a little one line, hey, good job. I don't necessarily like say thanks to that, but you know, I try to at least respond or heart or something every single person's video. So let's just like do this recap like we did last week because I really enjoyed it. The first thing we did on Monday, I talked about buying cheap tools. What I really wanted to talk about was the little fortune that I got, which I kept, and I was intending to do something with it. I don't know where it is. That said that the best angle to approach a problem is the triangle. And so I talked about, you know, I conjoined that topic with people often ask me what kind of tools they should buy when they're first getting into woodworking. And my response is usually the cheapest thing you can possibly find. Because chances are, as we are all humans, we don't change as much as we'd like to think that we do, and chances are you're not just going to pick up a new hobby later in life and just that's it, right? You're probably not going to stick with it. And if you do, great. But so I said, buy the cheap stuff. That'll give you the experience with the tool that you need to know in order to be able to buy the tool that actually suits your needs. And I don't see a problem spending 10 bucks on a tool to find out, all right, I really need the $50 version now, but now I know what features I want. I would rather do that than buy a $50 tool that doesn't have what I need and then have to buy another $50 tool because it has what I need. Most people were with me on that. Carl said, I'm with you on this philosophy, get in on the cheap and reinvest later as you discover what upgrades you want or need. That's what I just said. Fearsome Warrior said, going full berserker out of frustration is how I get anything done. Sometimes you just got to try. Just go for it, and it either works or it doesn't. Like the part to learn from that is the trying is that failure is always an option. Failure is a perfectly fine outcome, and you have to just accept it. It's not that you're a failure. It's that you didn't have the skills or the knowledge that you needed, and hopefully the trying taught you something. Matt says that he totally agree with people needing to remove their barriers to try new things or change their station in life, with the primary one that stops most people being, I can't afford it, and the second one being, I don't have the time. You can afford it, you have to make the time, period. Chances are you're doing something that is a complete, not necessarily a waste of time, but is not productive, like watching TV or movies or, you know, just sitting around playing on your phone. Use that time to, you know, explore a hobby that you actually want to try. Matt continues, says, both of them are lies that we tell ourselves, which, barring outside forces actively oppressing you, like systematic racism, are just excuses. And yes, it's an excuse. So he also suggested don't skimp out on blades for your table saw. I talked a good bit about that on Tuesday, so we'll get to that in a second. And Jonathan agreed you should go budget. We had one dissenter, and that was Chris. Chris said he feels so called out because he's the guy who would never buy Harbor Freight. His experience is that it's junk, and in fact, cheap tools can be a serious safety issue. I don't know that I have experienced serious safety issues with anything. I think that regardless of the tool, you should be treating it with respect, even if it's $1,000 versus $10, right? And that you should be using those tools exactly the same. So I don't necessarily understand the safety issue, but I'm also talking from a woodworking perspective. I understand that buying cheap abrasives for your grinder means that it might fragment and fly apart, and that could seriously injure you. Or buying a cheap impact wrench might destroy your sockets or something that could possibly hurt you on a machine side. But for woodworking, yeah, I mean, I guess a table saw, you know, get a saw stop, and they're, you know, they start at $1,000, I think. That's the cheapest one you can buy, whereas my saw is $500. He said if that tool you get is $500 from a very reputable brand, but there's a $20 version of it, I would never trust it. That's how you lose an eye. And then he talked about not doing woodworking, so he doesn't have that perspective, but he did machining. He had a friend who did woodworking, he did machining. Now, I mean, there are cheap versions of machine tools, but that hobby is miles above woodworking. You can woodwork with just something to cut and something to assemble. So hammer and nails and a saw, or an axe and screws. I mean, like, you just need a fastening thing and a stock shaping thing. Those two things, and it could be $10 and you could be making something. In fact, there'll be a video about that, I think. We'll talk about that in a second. So, very good comments there. I really enjoyed the discussion about that. And then this Tuesday video I followed up with, don't be too cheap. And I talked about Matt's topic of, yes, there are some tools, and especially hand tools, where buying the super cheap version of a chisel is going to be more frustrating for a person who doesn't understand how chisels work, and for a person who doesn't understand how much work has to go into making that chisel work. I use $5 Harbor Freight chisels exclusively, but I know how to make them work. I know what goes into diamond plating them until they're perfect, and after they're perfectly fine. The steel in them is great. I've never had an issue with them holding on edge or anything like that. It just takes a lot more of my time to set the tool up. Jonathan talked, we also talked about sandpaper. Matt discussed not using the brownback sandpaper. It clogs very quickly, and you have to learn that it's always better to just grab a fresh piece. And I talked a good bit about how I only use my rotary sandpaper. I don't really use sheet sand goods that much. I have little holders for my rotary sandpaper, and I use that all the time. And you buy a 5-pack of those for $2, so you're spending 40 cents per thingy. But in the end, if you're trying to hang on to that 40 cents and make it go until the last piece of sand is clogged, is it really worth your time? I'll just toss it and get a fresh piece pretty much every single time I need to sand. And sometimes multiple times. Like the headboard video that'll be coming out, I think I swapped sandpaper at least twice for every grit. So I used one of my sanding discs for half of the headboard, and then threw that disc away, got another one, did the other half. Then when I moved up a grit to 150, I did the same thing. So every time I did it, it was 2 pieces of paper to do one headboard. And Carl said, never buy cheap shoes or a cheap car. Basically means we should spend a little extra for things that are important. Yes. Cheap shoes in particular. I used to buy the Walmart boots when I was a mechanic. They were $20, and I would wear them for about a year and throw them away. But my feet hurt like crazy all the time, and I never really realized it until somebody got me a pair of steel-toed Wellingtons, like slip-on boots, that were from a very reputable company, and they blew my mind. Like, they were so comfortable to wear. I stopped wearing tennis shoes for 15 years of my life. I only recently, just when I took my current job, did I start wearing sneakers again. And yeah, there's definitely a thing, you know, don't buy cheap shoes. They hurt. Crosscut Creation said there's some good points. Price point is important to consider, as well as the correct tool for the job. There's a delicate balance between the right tool and a budget. Yes, and I think that's what I was trying to iterate on Monday, is that you don't know what the right tool is until you've used it, right? Or until you've used a version of that tool to realize, oh, that's not the correct version. If you just blindly go and say, I'm just going to buy the most expensive because it's obviously the best for me, that's just as much fallacy as buying the cheap version and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. I think that learning the use of a tool is far more useful information than buying the most expensive version and not knowing how to use it, because then you're frustrated that you spent so much money on a tool you don't quite understand. That's personally my take. He said somebody who's into carving shouldn't buy a $4,000 lathe, but they might invest in better carving chisels. Yeah, obviously. Don't buy a $4,000 lathe. Matt said perceived versus actual value is a tricky subject. If this was just about woodworking and it already has more variables considered that you can get right in a 10-minute video. That's the thing. Like, this tool talk that we've had all week doesn't apply to just woodworking or mechanicking or machining. Like, every single person watching this video uses tools every single day. Whether it's a fork and knife or chopsticks or your stove or a microwave, you use all of those tools all of the time. The difference is you already come pre-baked knowing how to use all of the appliances in your house, knowing how to use all of the the tools that you interface with on a daily basis as a basic human. You've been taught to use those tools and those appliances your whole life. So you have the built-in experience to know what works for you and what doesn't. I'm specifically talking about picking up a new hobby. I want to get into woodworking. What do I buy? Go buy a saw, go buy a hammer, go buy a drill, Try them. Buy the cheapest one you can get and see what works for you. Because you don't know yet. You haven't used those tools. So you have no concept of what is going to be the right tool for you. And, you know, that's the best way to learn. That was my take. That's what I was trying to get across this week with all of this talk. I think maybe Wednesday's video, when I said maybe don't be too cheap, was when I really talked about the chisels or something. And Carl said, my dad always had really nice tools and he could build anything. I always got tools at Walmart, which is why I couldn't build anything. Which is why I couldn't build anything is the part that I want to contend with. I have quite a few Walmart tools that I absolutely love. My Walmart oscillating tool, $17, the Hyper Tough brand. This thing is amazing. It works beautifully. I've cut drywall with it. I've cut plywood with it. I've cut trim with it. I've sanded with it. I couldn't be happier for $17. It's just as heavy as all of the other brands. It's just as powerful as all the other. It's fine, and it was $17. So I disagree that you can't build anything just because you have Walmart. Maybe I'll do a video where I make something with just Walmart tools. I don't know. Jonathan said, I was on a job where I wish I had brought my hand plane and picked up something at either Home Depot or Ace Hardware, and it was such a pain because I didn't have a way to fix it while I was out. I think I might have that, or then he's talked about the pull saw. This is when I talked about you don't know when you buy a plane just how much effort you have to put into that plane to make it work. And if you go to Ace Hardware and buy that $10 plane that I showed on Wednesday and try to use it, you'll be really frustrated because it just does not work. Like, it's dull out of the box. The blade's cut probably has a rounded edge. It's going to not work it's going to very much not work well until you've had a chance to touch it up. So that's definitely one of those tools you can't just go pick up on the way to the client's house and try to fix something. No. Oh, and then yesterday we talked about, more tools. My audio recorder, my video thing. I mentioned that I was going to come down here and do some work yesterday, and I did, and I just showed it to you. I made some craft boxes like this, but I ended up not filming and recording it. First of all, the microphone that I was going to use with this was a TRRS microphone, which is what you need to plug into your cell phone or some laptops. This is a TRS. The only other lav mic I have right now is a TS, and I'm not going to explain what all that means, but this lav mic will work. I got it on, I put it on, I came down, I got the camera, but I had forgotten to put the SD card in the camera, and I just didn't feel like going back upstairs. I made these kind of as B-roll. I was hoping to use the making of this, of the ones that I made yesterday. I made two of these little guys, and I made this crate guy. I made these, the intention was to kind of put this thing on and just have a B-roll of me making that to put on the video, because this is going to be your first woodworking project is nothing more than a hammer and a saw. Now, I used power tools to make all of these, and that was going to be kind of the point of the video. But I did make them. I did not film it. But Matt asked me if I had any plans on reposting or moving the project videos on this channel over to that channel, and right now, no. There's only a couple on this channel that I think are worth it, and they already have enough views that they get kind of caught in the algorithm by themselves. I don't want to move them, and I don't want to rehost them because that's kind of weird. If I were to do something like that, it would be a re-edit. I would just touch it up and move it. I have all the footage. I've saved all the footage I've ever shot for everything. I would just have to fix it up. But at this point, I don't really have any plans on moving anything over. I have probably a project list of 20 plus things that I want to make on camera. And I've just been kind of working my way through all of that. A lot of it is shop stuff. So I've got a big runway on projects. I don't necessarily need the footage. Carl said you took your own advice and purchased the right tool for the job. It went cheap, but not too cheap. Yeah, this is a $50 recorder, not the $200 recorder. I really don't think I need the $200 recorder. If I was doing like a more professional setup, maybe. But for dropping this in my pocket and clipping on a mic, I think this will be more than enough. I think, honestly, this has more features than I needed. I really just needed a way to record and stop. So we'll see. We'll see if my own advice works out, and maybe it was $50 wasted. I don't know. And then, I talked about wanting to be able to make a mobile filming thing, and so Jonathan asked me if I was going for a bucket pod thing for filming. What he was talking about there is there's quite a few people who put a pole in a bucket and fill it with concrete and then put casters on it, and they use that for a tripod that you can wheel around the shop. I might do that, or I might just use like a plywood base with some weight on it. I haven't quite decided yet how I'm going to build my rolling tripod, but it'll be something. And then Jonathan also asks if I'd be able to move videos. No, if I moved those videos over, it would lose all the views, it would lose all the organic traffic, because it would basically be deleted from this channel and then show up there fresh as a new video, and it would have to gain all of that traffic back. So moving it's not an option. I could just repost it over there. Like I said earlier, if I do that, it will probably be a chopped up edit. I'll probably do some post. Most of the projects that I've filmed on this channel are silent, and I hand wrote like title cards to let you know if I needed to say something. On the new channel, I would like to do a little bit more vocal exploration or explanation of the project. So if I do that sort of thing, there'd be some voiceover. But we'll see. So that was this week. What did you do this week? Let me know in the comments below. Do you have any plans for the weekend? I'd love to hear that too. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking and commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again Monday. Today's word you should know to sound smart is enunciate. It is a verb meaning to pronounce words carefully and clearly, to speak in a manner that makes you easily understood. No one will listen to him until he stops mumbling and learns to enunciate. Enunciate. E-N-U-N-C-I-A-T-E. Did I enunciate that enough?